Hello and welcome to my tutorial on jQuery animation. I am John from OneHourAcademy.com and thank you for joining me to learn how to make things move with jQuery. So before we get started, an optional step that you can follow is if you want to work with the same files that I've got, you can go to my website, OneHourAcademy.com, and you can download the project folder from there. Let's take a second to quickly look at how to do that. So you would go to OneHourAcademy.com, address you see here. On the home page there's a link to the courses. When you click on the courses, you'll be given a list of different courses that I've recorded. Now the list might be different by the time you play this video, but in that list somewhere you'll see the beginner jQuery in 1 hour tutorial link. That'll take you to the home page for that course, and at the very top of that course there are links to different files. So the one that you're going to look at is the lesson 5 animation files for this particular video. If you click that, it'll download the file and you'll get a zip file downloaded at the bottom of your browser. This is a screenshot taken from Chrome, so Chrome likes to have a little pop-up at the bottom where the downloads appear. If you've worked with zip files before, you're basically unzipping this by double-clicking it, and that will reveal the actual folder that we're going to work with, but it's still in a zip format. So then what you want to do is you want to drag it from there onto the desktop, so by the time you're done it'll be on the desktop ready for you to do some work on it. So the other assumption, or ideally the thing that you will have, is Aptana Studio, and that's a free download, great program to work with web pages and web files, and my entire tutorial that I'm going to do is done in Aptana Studio, so I'd encourage you to download that as well. Assuming you've got that, what you want to do next is you want to import your project. So you're going to go File and then find the Import option, and that'll bring up this dialog box here. You're going to choose Existing Folder as New Project and hit the Next button. That'll bring up this dialog that you see here, and you'll hit the Browse button, find the desktop, find JQuery and select that folder. By the time you're done, you'll be ready to go with the project open. You'll see a folder for images, there'll be a home page for index, and this other stuff .txt, which contains things you'll need later on in the assignment. And the opening page looks something like this, and that's what we'll start with in the live tutorial. So once you've got all that done, let's just talk a little bit about what we're going to cover in this tutorial before we actually get to it. So I'm going to cover a few things. I'm going to cover the fade options, fade in, fade out, fade toggle, the slide up and slide down and slide toggle options, as well as the animate option. Let's take a look at all these in a bit more detail. So for fading, say I've got an image and I've given it an ID of IMG face. In jQuery I can order that image to fade out slowly, so I can provide the word slow to indicate the speed at which I want to fade it out. Fade in works the same way. Another option that you can provide, rather than a word like slow or fast, is the milliseconds. So 2000 means take 2 seconds to fade in. Okay? There's also fade toggle, and you can also leave this blank and it'll just do a default speed as well. So fade toggle will basically take the state of the image and put it in its other state. So if it's already been faded in, it'll fade it out. If it's been faded out, it'll fade in. Here's kind of a simulation of what that would look like. So there's the happy face fading in. Now this is a slideshow, but you can actually get that effect to happen right on your web page using these animation commands. Okay, similarly for sliding, you can do a slide up, you can do a slide down, and a slide toggle. Now I don't have a visual on this one, but basically it's an image that's going to collapse up or collapse down, almost like a set of blinds, and slide toggle will make it go up or down depending on what state it's in right now. Okay, the last one, animate, is a little bit trickier because there's a step you have to do ahead of time. So first you've got to pick any property that you want to in the style section, a CSS property, and you've got to set it. So for example, I could have an image and I can say in the style property I want the left location of this image, or the left property, to be set to 10 pixels. Once I've got the property set, then I can go on and I can animate it. So I can give it a new value and it'll transition to that new value. So for example, if I go imageface.animate the left property 70 pixels, it'll travel from 10 to 70 pixels and move in that location, something like this. Okay, so you'll see that kind of an effect right on your web page. So that's basically what we're going to cover. Let's now take a look at the demo and the steps involved to do it. Our finished product is going to animate 3 images. It's going to have each one slide up to reveal information about that image when you click on the image. I'm going to warn you though that it's about a 20-minute long segment we're getting into now. I've divided it into 8 smaller sections to make it a bit more manageable, but stick with me and you'll learn a lot about animation in jQuery. So ideally, when you get into the next part of this video, by now you'll have downloaded the working files and imported them into Aptana. You can of course work with your own files or just watch what I do and apply that to your own work as well, but the files are there if you do in fact need them. So here's a preview of what we're going to be making. When you click on any of these buttons here, you'll see a different tourist attraction come in from New York, Central Park, Statue of Liberty. When you click on any of those pictures, they kind of roll up and then you see some information about them in the background. So we're going to start by making the buttons first. So in the body area, we're going to put in a button tag with /button. What goes between each of these is what you're going to see on the actual button itself. So I need a Central Park button, I'm going to need an Empire State Building, and Statue of Liberty. So if I copy and paste each of these 3, I'm just going to go in between each button and I'm going to change what is going to be set on the button. So there's Empire State, and then the last one of course will be Statue of Liberty. Now, jQuery needs each button to have its own ID so that we can write code and each button can behave differently when it gets clicked on. So I'm going to come back up quickly and add an ID to each of these. So this one I'm going to call BTN Park for Button Central Park. And the next one I'm going to type in ID equals, and I'm going to go with BTN Empire. I like to put BTN on the front of my IDs for buttons so I remember what they're called. Now, when you do yours, you're not going to get these options that pop up the way I do, like you see here. So when I go equals, it's because I've got this done already in another window. But you'll have to type these ones out. But BTNC Park, Empire, and Statue. Below that, I'm going to put my images. So these are all going to be image source. And these are all located in the images folder. And so I'm going to choose each of these. So there's centpark.jpg that comes up right off the bat. And I think I've just got to fix a quote here. Let me just get that quote out of the end there. There we go, much better. All right, so now that I've got that, I'm going to Control-C, copy, and Control-V, paste it. I'm going to put a line break above the buttons, or above the images. And I'm just going to change each image to its right file name. So this will be empstate.jpg, and this one will be for the Statue of Liberty, so statlib.jpg. Just like my buttons, I'm going to give each of these a unique ID so that I can tell them apart later on in jQuery. So I'm going to give them the same ID as the buttons, except without the BTN in front of it. Okay, so Statue of Liberty is going to be ID of statue. Empire State will be Empire as the ID. And Central Park, the ID will be C Park. All right, so that's a start. I'm going to save that now. And I'm just going to preview it in my browser. When I push play, it goes into Firefox. So you can see everything there. Nothing's working yet, but we will do that in the next part. So now it's time to define a bit of style with our images. So in the head area, just below the end of the script, but above /head, we're going to create a style section here. So I'm going to type in IMG in my style. And I'm going to do a few things here to have each image stack on top of each other. First thing I'm going to do is position absolute. That's going to force me to put an exact XY position and kind of glue them on the page exactly where I want them. So from the left of the page, I'm going to go in 10 pixels. From the top of the page, I'm going to go down 80 pixels. And sorry, that's 50 pixels. I'm going to specify a width and a height of 200 pixels. This is going to give them all the exact same size. And you'll only see one of these images because they're all going to be stacked on top of each other. So following the width and the height, I'm going to also add a cursor setting, which will be pointer, so that later on when I mouse over each image, I'm going to have sort of a hand pointer appear. All right, so if I save that and preview it, you'll see just one image because they're all stacked on top of each other. So the last one is there, the other two are underneath it right now. But what I want is to have them all hidden at the beginning. So going up to my startup function, I'm going to create a function called hide all. So I'm going to call it in startup first of all, so it gets called right away. And then below that, I'm going to define function hide all. And essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to just tell all of my images to start out being hidden. Okay, and there's an easy way to do that. If I just refer to them all by their IMG tag, so if I just go $IMG dot hide, what that will do is right off the bat when the document loads, it's going to hide everything. So if I save it now and preview it, you're not going to see any of the images. They're still there, but they're just not visible. So now it's time to make each button do something when we click on it. You remember earlier I created my 3 buttons, so let me start with the Central Park button. So I'm going to refer to it by its ID, so that's hashtag BTN CPark. And when I go to .click it, I'm going to run another function, and I'm just going to put the name of that function right here inside the click brackets. That function is going to be called showPick. So now I need to go outside of Startup and create another function called showPick. So we're going to type the word function, showPick, and you can probably guess what we're going to do. What I want to do is turn this Central Park image on so that I can see it. Okay, so first I'm going to go hide all again just to erase whatever image used to be there. And then I'm going to ask the image CPark with the ID CPark down there, I'm going to ask it to show. So the way I do that again is $ and then in quotes hashtag CPark dot show. And what that will do is it'll just appear when I click on the button. So let's just try that and see how that works. So I'm going to save it and I'm going to push play. And we'll just click on the Central Park button to see if that works. And sure enough, there we go. Now the other 2 buttons don't work yet. I'm going to get them to run the same function, but have them run with different pictures. And I'll show you how to do that next. First I'm going to highlight the original call and I'm going to paste it 2 more times. Just change the button name so that the other 2 buttons are running the same function. And again, those buttons are called BTN Empire and BTN Statue. So I'm going to put those in right here. Now, as of now, they're all going to show the same picture. Here's what I'm going to do to make them show different pictures. So what happens next is before I go to call showPick, I can go before that and put 2 curly braces. Okay, so I'm going to put 2 curly braces and a bracket, or sorry, a comma, and another 2 curly braces and a comma. And then inside here, I'm going to supply the name of the picture that I want to display. So I'm going to go pick ID, and then I'm going to type in a JQuery reference to the picture that I want. Okay, so for the first one, it's Central Park, so I'm just going to put that up here and just paste it right in there. So now I can go to the other 2 buttons, and I'm going to highlight the first one, and I'm going to copy and paste it, and just change the pick ID so it's going to show a different picture rather than always Central Park. So obviously the Empire button is going to show Empire, and Statue of Liberty will show Statue. So if I come back up here, I'm going to just change hashtag CPark to hashtag Empire, referring to the Empire image. And then the last one is going to be Statue. Okay, so then one last change is in the showPick function itself. Rather than always showing CPark, I'm going to pass in this thing called an event. So if I type the word event up here, I can get reference to that pick ID through the event. So what I'm going to do is have another variable here, which I'm just going to call pick. And pick equals event.pickid, or sorry, .data.pickid. And that's going to pick up the pick ID that's being sent in with the function. Okay, and then on the next line, rather than showing Central Park, I'm just going to change that to be pick. So pick.show, because pick represents the pick ID that's being sent in. It's a neat little trick, so you can have all 3 run the same function. So now if I push play, you'll see that every button loads a different picture. So there's Central Park, there's Empire State, and there is Statue of Liberty. Looking good so far. Now it's time for some animation. So after I show a picture, I'm going to add a .animate command. And what I'm going to do is move the left coordinate from its current 10 pixel position over to 70. So when you go .animate, you're basically just changing a CSS property that you've defined previously. So I'm going to say basically left, I want you to change from your current setting to this new setting of 70 pixels. Now watch how I type this. You got to put the name of the property in quotes and then a colon and then another quote setting for the what you want it to be. Okay, so here's what it looks like here. Left in quotes, colon, and then 70 pixels in quotes. So if I save that and push play, you'll see that each thing shows, each image, and then it slides over. Okay, but it only happens once, and then it gets kind of stuck there, because what's happening is it's not being reset to 10 pixels for the next time it animates. It just stays at 70 at this point. So, and part of our hide all function, what I'm going to do is I'm going to also tag on to the dot hide for all images to apply a CSS setting as well. So I'm going to reset the CSS the same way I do the animate. I'm going to just say I want the left property to go back to 10 pixels again. That way it'll keep sliding out every time I click on one of the buttons to show the image. So I'm just tagging that on in addition to hiding. Alright, so now if I push play, you'll see that each image always starts at 10 and slides out to the middle, and even if I go back, it'll keep doing that. Alright, so now we want to be able to click on each image and have it slide up to disappear. So I'm going to grab a reference to each image here from above and just paste it down here. So that refers to the Central Park image, and then we're going to also do the same thing for the Empire and statue images. So I'm just going to copy and paste these from previous. And I'm going to have a click function on each of these as well. Okay, it's going to be for a different function this time called reveal. So if I go dot click, and then in brackets here, the name of the function is reveal. And I'm going to have all three run that same function, just like all three buttons run the show pick function. Okay, and for now what I'm going to have reveal simply do is just have each picture slide up. So down below I'm going to say function reveal, and then open and close brackets, and then the curly braces. And then I'm going to use that keyword this, which means whichever of these is being clicked on, I want it to slide up. So I go this dot slide up, and that will cause each picture that gets clicked on to slide up. So watch what this looks like now. So when I push play, I'm going to have each picture animate up, and then when you click on it, it slides up and out of view. It's kind of a nice effect to have it disappear when you're done with it. So now we're ready to add the info box for the information on each thing. So below the images I'm going to add a div, which is a placeholder to add the information. I'm going to give it the ID of info and then /div. We'll put a space there for now. This requires us to add another style to our style section for info. Now a lot of the style is going to be similar to the image. So if I just type #info, which refers to the info div, and I'm going to also make it position absolute so I can glue it right where I want it on the screen. Now the left is going to be 70 pixels to match up with where the images will be when they're done animating. The top will be the same as the images, so it'll be 50 pixels. Moving over to the width and the height, I'm going to make them the same size. Although in hindsight I probably should have made them 160 pixels instead of 200, because you'll see what I do after the width and the height here. I'm going to add a padding, which actually blows the box up to be a bit bigger, of 20 pixels. So that'll make the box bigger than the images. Just like the images, I'm going to have a cursor pointer, and I'm going to finish off the cursor pointer. I'm going to finish off with a background color of tan. And of course, you are free to use any background color that you want to. So I'm going to save this once I'm done. And I'm just going to preview this. Now it's not going to look pretty yet. I just want to make sure the box is where I want it to be. So if I preview it now, there it is. Now the images slide in underneath it right now, so we're going to quickly fix that by hiding this box and only showing it when we want to. So if we go back into our code here just for a second, I'm going to go to the hide all function, and I'm also going to add a call to the info div. So I'm going to go $#info in quotes, and when I go to hide the images, I'm also going to do a .hide on info, so it's also disappearing. Okay, but I also want it to appear at some point. So when that's going to happen is on the reveal. So after I slide up the image, that's when I want the box to show up. So I'm just going to copy a reference to the box, and I'm going to use this thing called fade in, and what that will do is just slowly fade it into view. Okay, so this happens as the image, after the image slides up. So I'm going to use 1000, which means it's going to take 1000 milliseconds or 1 second to fade in. So if I save that, and I preview it again, as I reveal each image and then it slides up, then the box reveals itself. Okay, and that happens for all the images. Okay, and the box is bigger than the image simply because I added some padding to it. Okay, but that looks pretty good. So now we're ready to put some information in the info div. So I'm going to start by going to reveal, and I'm going to add a call to info, and I'm going to append some HTML. Okay, so if you go info.html, we can write some HTML code into the info div. So you're going to see where I'm going to go with this. I'm going to type event.data.tag, and I'm going to work backwards to make that make more sense as we go through. Okay, so I'm just going to keep that in there for now. I'm going to put an H2 tag in front of it, just so that when we pass the tag in from elsewhere, it's going to be highlighted a bit larger, bold, and then I'll go after the tag and I'll slash H2 to finish my heading 2. Okay, so then once that is done, I'm going to go back up and I'm going to modify how the reveal is clicked, just like the show pick function. I'm going to customize what gets sent into reveal. So I'm going to copy what I did in show pick first of all. Let me paste that there. Now instead of pick ID, I'm going to use another thing called tag here, which is what I already wrote down below. Okay, and instead of a reference to an image, I'm just going to simply put the words that I want to appear. Okay, so for Central Park, when I click on it, I want to send in a tag that simply just says Central Park. So I'm going to modify tag and make it Central Park, and then comma reveal. So just like show pick, we're going to send some information in, but this time I'm going to call it tag instead of pick ID. So I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste that, and then I'm going to send it to the other two calls to reveal, and then all I got to do is change tag from Central Park to what it should be. So this one will be Statue of Liberty, and then the Empire State Building will be the tag I'm sending in when I click on the Empire image. So remember, this is clicking on each image, sending in a tag, which will then get sent into the info div. Now I'm going to save this and I'm going to try it, but it's not going to work right away. Let me show you what's happening right now. So when I click on each one of these, I'm still getting a blank box. Okay, and that's because I forgot to add one thing to my reveal function, and that's that keyword event. Okay, so that allows me to pass in some information to my reveal method or my reveal function. So if I save it, this time it should work. I'm going to click on Central Park, and sure enough, there's the tag coming in when I run the function by clicking on the images. So we're almost there. Just got one more step to go. So there's more information I've got to send into the info div when I click on each picture. So I'm going to declare a variable at the top here, and I'm going to call this variable I'll just call it stuff for now, for lack of a better term. Okay, and beside that I'm going to put 2 square brackets. This means I can create a list of information. And what I'm going to do is just have 3 lines of information with everything I want to say about each tourist attraction. So I've already typed this out ahead of time, just to save time. I'm going to copy and paste this from the finished assignment and bring it back over to index. If you wanted to actually follow with this information, you may want to pause the video at some point here and just take a look at what I've got. Essentially, I've got the 3 tourist attractions complete with headings and a horizontal ruler and a paragraph for each one. So take a pause so you can see that information if you want to type that out. So now that I've got the complete information, rather than sending in Central Park, I'm going to send in stuff 0. Okay, because 0 is the first item in the list. It goes 0, 1, and 2. Empire State Building will be stuff 1, which is the second thing in the list. And then the next one will be stuff 2. So this is going to completely change what goes inside the info div. It's going to be a complete paragraph, heading, and horizontal line for each of the tourist attractions. And that's all I got to do to finish off that part of it. So when I push play now, you're going to see a lot more information about each item. And it's nicely formatted with a paragraph and a horizontal rule. So this is all the information that's stored in the stuff variable. For our final trick, we're going to toggle the information in the picture back and forth. So the first thing I've got to do though is I've got to take this var pick in show pick, and I've got to declare that variable at the very top, right below stuff. This will allow me to use pick in both functions and not just in the show pick function. So I don't want to redeclare it down here, so I'm just going to leave it as pick equals event.data.pickid. Now I can use that same reference to pick in reveal. That way, instead of just sliding up all the time, I can slide back and forth. The way I do that is slide toggle. That basically means slide up, slide down, back and forth. Along the same lines, I want to do the same thing with info using a fade toggle. That'll allow it to fade in and fade back and go back and forth. So now that both of these are going to go back and forth, I want to actually add info as another thing that clicks on to run and reveal. Only it's going to do the opposite of what the images do. So I'm going to get a reference to info, and I'm going to go .click and reveal. The only difference is it's not going to send in any tag information. All it's going to do is the opposite of what the images do. So that's where the toggle comes in. Okay, so once I've got that set, I'm going to save it, and I'm going to push play, and you'll see now that when I bring an image into view, I can click it, and then there's the information, and I can click it and it goes back and forth. So this is what toggling does. Okay, so the image is slide toggling and the info is fade toggling, so they just go back and forth. And that is the end of our long tutorial. This is John from OneHourAcademy.com, thanking you for sticking with me all through the entire 3+ minutes of tutorial here. Hope you enjoyed that. And we will catch you on the next and final installment of my jQuery tutorial, where I'm going to do sort of a final comprehensive demonstration, and I hope you come back to check that one out as well.